You have to decide what to focus on. Life is always happening for me, not to me. Jim Rohn taught me success leaves clues. They're not lucky. They're doing something different than you. So figure out what that is. Most people today, our culture today reinforces people for being a victim more than being a victor. No pain, no gain, but today we know that's not true. I mean, how many people do you know that were rich and famous and the world loved and they killed themselves because they stopped growing? I was 11 and we had, my fathers were good men, but they, variously got unemployed at various times. And when they're unemployed, my mom didn't work, so we had no income. We had some food stamps. So we had Thanksgiving when I was 11, we had no food. We weren't going to starve. We had saltine crackers and peanut butter. But when everybody else is having a turkey dinner, it feels a bit depressing. And my mom and dad were screaming at each other and saying things that, I didn't want my brother or sister to hear. And once you say them, you can't take them back. And then my life has changed because knock on the door, I go there, there's this big guy standing there with 2 bags of groceries, one in each hand. And he had already set down a pot with a frozen turkey on the ground. And he said, "Is your father here?" And I'm like, just one moment. And I was like so excited, like little boy at Christmas. So like, this is going to change everything. My dad's going to be happy. Mom's going to be so happy. So I went to my dad, "There's a guy at the door for you." He says, "You answer it." I said, "I did answer it. He's for you. What does he want?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "He can only talk to you." And then I'm sitting there waiting with internal joy. And he opens the door, sees the man, does not let the man even speak, and just says, "We don't accept charity," and slams the door on the guy. But the man holding the groceries had leaned forward a little bit, so it hit his shoulder and bounced off his shoulder, which made my dad even more mad. He said, "Sir," he said, "listen, somebody knows you're I'm just the delivery guy. Somebody knows you're having a tough time, and everybody has tough times, at times, and they want you to have a great Thanksgiving." And my father said, "We don't accept charity," and he pushed again. Because the guy leaned in, his leg and foot had gone in, so it hit his toe and popped open again. He actually had a soft, gentle voice about it, and he saw me, and he said, "Sir, don't let your family, suffer because of your ego." My father's face, I remember it like yesterday, the veins in the side of his neck popping, his face beet red. And I'm waiting for him to punch him, and then his shoulders just dropped. I'll never forget. He grabbed the groceries, threw them on the table, didn't say thank you, slammed the door. And I was shocked, and then I was sad, and I didn't know how to process, why isn't he happy, or why, we're gonna have a great Thanksgiving now, But my father had always said, strangers, nobody cares about us. And I thought we lived in a very wealthy community. It was actually very lower middle class, but we were the poorest of the poor, literally across the railroad tracks. And that's where the people went in that particular community that really had nothing. And so it looked like nobody cared. But I had different evidence that day. And I remember, I didn't figure it out that day, but I don't know, about 3 years later, I was probably 14, 15 years old, and I became obsessed with understanding human behavior at that stage already. I was already starting to read books and absorb things at that stage. I took a speed reading class and said, I'm going to read a book every day. I didn't do that. But in 7 years, I read 700 books in human development, psychology, physiology. But I started thinking about what made that happen. And I realized there's 3 decisions. Most of the time, they're unconscious. So you get the same result over and over again. It's a good result, it's a good result. Most people, not so great result, that's what it is. And those 3 decisions are, number 1, you have to decide what to focus on. But the biggest difference is the minute you focus on something, the second decision you have to make, your brain makes, is what does this mean? Is this a threat or is this an opportunity, right? Your brain is doing that constantly. And so is this person disrespecting me? Is this person challenging me? Is this person coaching me? Is this person loving on me? If you think they're disrespecting you, you're gonna have a very different emotional response than if you think they're loving on you, right? And whatever emotion you feel controls the 3rd decision, which is, what should I do? If you're pissed off, you're gonna have a very different decision than if you're feeling grateful, obviously, right? What if everything in your life happened for a reason? What if there was a higher purpose, but it's your job to find it? I believe life is always happening for me, not to me, but it doesn't always look that way. So I gotta dig, I gotta find, and sometimes it takes it. But it made you stronger, it made you care more, it made you be a different person. Now look at the emotion in you even now when you think about it. You're near tears just even thinking about it. So I think it's important for people to realize that if they go back and really look at their life, if they don't go on drugs and alter their state. If you alter your state, you'll never come up with a better meaning. But if you stay off drugs and you stay straight and you push for it, sooner or later you're gonna find there is a benefit that far exceeds the pain you went through. And I don't want to see anybody suffer. The reason I do what I do is I suffered so much, I don't want everybody else to suffer. So I've spent a lifetime looking at tools to help people break those patterns, master their body, their emotion, their relationship, their finances, the areas of life that matter. And then I started doing it in business. So now I have 114 companies. We do $9 billion in business now, and across all these different industries. I had no traditional college education in business. It was just all modeling. Jim Rohn taught me success leaves clues. That if someone is successful, not for a day or a week or a month or a year, but a decade or more, they're not lucky. They're doing something different than you. So figure out what that is. And so most of my books are that. Like I wanted to help people financially after 2008. I was pissed off. I knew a lot in that area. But I'm like, okay, let me interview 50 of the smartest financial people in the world. And they're all different, but let's extract what do they have in common. And my billionaire clients loved it, but the average person loved it. Because I believe that, look, we're not in an information culture anymore. The information society died a long time ago. There's too much information. You're drowning in information and starving for wisdom. But we are an entertainment culture today. But I think it's important for people to know what you just experienced, that the worst of times really is designed to be the best of times, but it's our job to use it, not let it use us. Most people today, our culture today reinforces people for being a victim more than being a victor. If you're a victor, you must have abused someone, you must have taken advantage. If you're a victim, well, look at all this love and attention comes your way. And it's an upside down world right now. It was generated a good portion by social media where nothing is really true, where people alter the way they look so they look better than they are, and then makes people insecure all the time because they're worried about what if people find out I'm not who I project myself to be. The easiest thing in the life is to be yourself. And your vulnerability right now, I just honor and respect. I can go up into tears at the edge of the lap about something that matters. I don't think that's unmasculine. I think it's just sincere. So, and your sincerity comes from the level of intensity of what you face, but look at the muscles you built. But I'm crazily driven because now it's no longer the pain that drives me. That's how it started.
Yeah.
And anger at some points was driving me, but those sources of fuel don't last. What will keep you driven is not so much push as pull. Push is you're trying to make yourself doing something. Pull is that you've got an obsession for something. You want to serve something more than yourself. And you disappear. I mean, when we think only about ourselves, we're always messed up. Anxiety and fear and all this, you hear all these kids today talking about, mental, what's the word they use for it? Not mental wellness, what do they call it? Mental challenges or whatever, and wanting to soothe themselves. They know they need to become stronger. And they don't know it. It's not their fault. They've grown up in an environment where you can push a button and get whatever you want in 2 seconds on your phone, You don't even have to walk across the street and get the food, God forbid. They'll deliver it to your house. That's the world we're in. But the world goes through seasons. And the season you experience early in life of being really challenged, every 18 to 20 years, the season changes. And so we have seasons of our life. 0 to 21 is springtime. It's easy to grow. You've lived it, and everyone can feel when you've lived it versus you're just talking bullshit or talking something you thought of, right, or read about. And by the way, when you're done with that, you've helped those people, it'll happen again. That is life. So what I tell people is, right now, you've got to cultivate gratitude. It's not positive thinking bullshit. It's because to live in pain will not make it better in any way. You have to make that shift of gratefulness that you didn't lose it. I mean, it is a miracle that there are, 13 people that died out of that when there's 10,000 homes that are gone and all the schools and all the, shopping centers and all those things that are out there. That's an incredible gift. It looks like, a war zone. I mean, I was there. I know what you're talking about. So that's number one. But here's what happens. You find out how strong you are. Here's the second thing you learn when you go through hell. You discover who your real friends are versus your Facebook friends, because there's the ones that show up and are there for you. And thirdly, you develop an immunity to future challenges because you develop muscle in dealing with this issue that you wouldn't have. It's like, how do you build a muscle? You don't pick a light weight and do 100 reps. That will do nothing. You got a way you can barely lift and you can push through and you're trying to do 8 reps and you can't do 1 more and the trainer says 4 more, and you do 3 more and you get more growth there than any other time. This is building us emotionally and spiritually, no matter what you try and how we learn from other people. And so I'm excited about what the next 30 plus years, hopefully, if I live that long, will provide in terms of my ability to serve even more people. And I think that's what you got to do. If I were to finish, I'd say, find something you care about more than yourself, because that's what's going to be the secret to your growth and your aliveness. Whether it's your family, it's your friends, it's your company, it's a nonprofit thing to you, it's a mission for you. If you can find that and find something that gives you that pull, your life is going to be one hell of an adventure. No pain, no gain, but today we know that's not true. If you think you're going to just go off and enjoy your life and not add value, you're going to be deluded, you're going to be frustrated, how many people do you know that were rich and famous and the world loved and they killed themselves because they stopped growing? I give this to half dozen people I've thought of in the last 10 years that have done that process. Yeah. So I think, to me, it's not duty, but I do believe those much is given, much is expected. But to me, the expectation is a pleasure. I think the language we use trains our brain. But you see what I mean? The words change your biochemistry. The words you attach to an experience become your experience. If you over and over use certain words, you won't even know it, and you'll train yourself to have certain, what I call an emotional home. Certain emotions you go back to because the language takes you there. And duty and responsibility, if you're trained like a soldier, that might work. If you've trained yourself that no pain, no gain, that might work. At 36 years old, you've built such a foundation of business, of contribution, of wealth, of your body, that at this stage, it shouldn't be pain, it shouldn't be suffering. I don't think it has to be any of those things. I think it can be total joy, but you have to kind of rewire your brain, because otherwise that past training conditions you, in my opinion. But I think at some point in your life, there has to be something more than you that calls you. I'm not trying to give you a sermon, I'm just so passionate. I have a love for you because you've delivered so much value, and I hate when I see someone with so much value. And to me, I see this as a little bit of suffering. You wouldn't call it that, but there's a conflict inside. I don't want to see you suffer, you're too good a human being. I don't see anybody suffer, much less you. But what happened is you're so in your head. So even think of what you did, like a goal worth suffering for. I mean, I don't have goals that I'm worth suffering for. No, don't get me wrong. Not every day is not like pure bliss, and there's lots of things that I don't love to do that I need to do to succeed, or I got to deal with. That's part of life. But pain is part of life. Suffering's an option. You've heard that phrase, but it's a fact. It's not just a phrase. That's why you've heard that shit so more. But when you make it your goal to find a goal worth suffering for, you're gonna suffer, because your brain is always gonna reduce things. It's like your brain will never make you happy. That's the problem. It won't even allow you to enjoy an apple. You go, is it organic? It's like your brain is analyzing so much. You got so stuck up here that you're missing this magnificent human being that I see in front of me here. You're missing to have the joy of him. I look at opportunities first to see, do I have passion for what it's about? Is it something that I would do for free if I felt it was really successful, that it felt fulfilling, it felt alive, it felt it was worth doing, right? Is there a mission behind it? Is it selling widgets? I have no interest. Second thing I look for is, who are the people? I want people I'm gonna enjoy being with. But I look at the people and I look at their heart and soul, what's driving them, and I also look at their skill, because you need both, right? So if someone's got a track record, someone's negotiating with me right now on a really large project, and if the project made no money, I would probably do the project as long as I organize it so I can have the kind of reward for my time and my energy, because the project has such reach, global reach, on a very deep level. I'm very connected to it, and this person's built a business and went to $2 billion, so they got a great track record. It's not me caring at all, but together 1 + 1 could equal 5, not 2. So a deal like that gets my attention. We get caught up on the original definition versus how we can live it, right? But I love this idea. If you did that, how many people, does it matter how many? But one person alone feels amazing when you do that, but is there a number that in your mind would say, like, this would be like insanely fun, insanely great? You want an unreasonable goal, but you need a timeline. So what would be our 36-month goal or 24-month goal?